next thing we're going to talk about is photosynthesis. So here's a quick overview of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process of using energy from sunlight to convert water and carbon dioxide into oxygen and carbohydrates, or sugars. So if we think back, what type of organisms do you think do photosynthesis? In other words, what type of organisms can take the energy in the sun and convert it into food or sugar? If you were thinking plants, you would be correct. So photosynthesis is made up of two parts. The first being the light-dependent reactions, meaning they require sunlight. The light-dependent reactions takes water and produces oxygen. So it splits the water up and as a result releases oxygen. Through this process, it also converts ADP, so if you remember our partially charged battery, into ATP, and NADP plus into NADPH, okay? So if you're not sure what NADP plus is, it's just an electron carrier, meaning it's a molecule that's going to carry electrons to another process, and we'll talk about what that process is a little later. We know that photosynthesis occurs in an organelle called a chloroplast, and a chloroplast is an organelle only found in plants. Typically, it looks green. Specifically, within the chloroplast, photosynthesis occurs in the thylakoids. And the reactions that we're talking about right now are light-dependent reactions. So another way of saying it is that the light-dependent reactions occurs in the thylakoid of the chloroplast. So if you take a look over here at this diagram, you will see that carbon dioxide and water go into my chloroplast, along with some light energy, specifically from sunlight, and as a result, I get sugar and oxygen. The light-independent reactions, also known as the Calvin cycle, or the dark reactions, use ATP and NADPH. So they use the full battery, in other words, the energy, from the light reactions to convert carbon dioxide into sugar or food. This takes place in the stroma of the chloroplast, and we'll take a look at a diagram in just a minute. The stroma is the space in between the thylakoids. In other words, it's kind of like the open space or empty space within my chloroplast. So there are some stages of photosynthesis that we need to talk about, and basically we've covered them, but we're going to summarize them now. The first stage is energy capture. The energy is captured from the sunlight and it occurs outside. Stage 2 is the light-dependent reactions. The light energy is converted into chemical energy. This is very, very important. I would like you to star, double star, underline, or highlight stage 2. Light energy is converted to chemical energy. Through this process, the energy is temporarily stored as ATP. Remember, ATP is a molecule that we use for immediate energy. So it's stored as ATP and as the electron carrier molecule NADPH. In stage 3, the Calvin cycle, or the light-independent reactions, or the dark reactions, the chemical energy stored in ATP and NADPH powers the formation of organic compounds. Remember, organic compounds is anything that contains carbon. So this uses the carbon dioxide. So again, photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast of the plant cell, and sometimes in algae, and in the cell membrane of some prokaryotes. So in eukaryotes, specifically plants, it's going to be in the chloroplast. Even in some photosynthetic algae, it will be in the chloroplast. But if we're talking about a photosynthetic bacteria, or a prokaryote, it's going to occur in the cell membrane. Okay, So here's my chloroplast. If I look at my chloroplast, I'm going to put the pen on the thylakoid. Here is a thylakoid. Okay, so all of this empty space, the white space right here, is going to be the stroma. Okay, so we're going to take a look at what is happening in photosynthesis. So my light-dependent reactions occur in a thylakoid. So this is just a blown-up thylakoid, and water goes in. As a result, oxygen comes out, and this requires light energy. So please go ahead now and label your diagram. Another output from light-dependent reactions is ATP and NADPH. These two molecules, one an energy molecule, ATP, and the other an electron carrier molecule, NADPH, go into the Calvin cycle. In addition to those two, carbon dioxide goes into the Calvin cycle, and as a result, I get sugar. Through the process of the Calvin cycle, I get NADP plus because a hydrogen or an electron is pulled off of my NADPH. And I get ADP because some of the energy from ATP is used and I pop that phosphate off to form ADP. This is a nice summary of photosynthesis, and I would use this to study for an upcoming quiz. So the stages of photosynthesis. We have the light reactions. What goes into a light reaction? Well, I have light, water, ADP, and NADPH. NADP plus. As a result of my light-dependent reactions, I get oxygen, ATP, and NADPH. In my light-independent reactions, or the Calvin cycle, carbon dioxide goes in, as well as ATP and NADPH. As a result, I get sugar, which is a food molecule, ADP and NADP plus. So why do plants look green? That's a really good question. Many people think that plants look green because they use green light during photosynthesis. This is not a correct statement. In fact, plants do not use green light. Instead, red and blue light are used. Plants look green because they contain the pigment chlorophyll. Chlorophyll reflects green and yellow light and absorbs blue and red light. So if you think about what colors you see, you are seeing colors that are reflected to your eyes. Everything else is absorbed. So if I can see red, all the colors except for red are absorbed, and red is reflected. So think about what you're wearing right now. If you're wearing a pair of jeans that are blue jeans, all the colors except for blue are being absorbed into your jeans. What's being reflected is the color blue. So a summary formula for photosynthesis. We have carbon dioxide, CO2, and water that go into my formula. In addition, I would like you to draw the arrow that I'm drawing in now. We also have sun, or light energy. The sun goes into this reaction as well, and out comes C6H12O6, or glucose. Sorry about my writing, I'm not so good at writing on the computer. Glucose and oxygen. Keep in mind what what this formula stands for. It's my photosynthesis formula. You must know this formula. You must be able to produce it. It will not be a multiple choice question on upcoming quizzes and tests. So remember, 6 carbon dioxide and 6 water with sunlight go into the reaction. These are called my reactants. What comes out is glucose or sugar, C6H12O6, and O2. These are my products. So there are some factors that can affect photosynthesis, especially the rate at which it occurs. In other words, how fast am I able to take sunlight and convert it to food or sugar? Some of these things are the intensity of light. In other words, how much light am I getting, and is it direct light or indirect light? How much water is the plant receiving, as well as temperature? If the temperature is just perfect, photosynthesis can occur pretty quickly. But when the temperature is pretty cold or pretty hot, it's not going to occur as quickly. So there is an optimum temperature or a best temperature that photosynthesis occurs at.